So the year is drawing to a close, but what were the best albums of 2024? Let's get into it, shall we? Welcome classic rock fans to the best albums of 2024. If you're new to this channel, please do click like, subscribe and check that notification bell, do all that stuff. And check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. Anyway, enough of this flim-flam, let's get into it, shall we? Number 10 is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and their album B751. I rather enjoy this album from this prolific band. It has a kind of breezy, rollicking feel to it, which makes its weighty themes seem a little less weighty, as the songs collapse into a kind of a casual, unfolding conversational style. This was described by The Guardian as one of the most cheerful doomer records in recent memory, but its often jangly, indie-sounding guitars seem to serve as a distraction from the depressive haze that hangs over this record. And being a rather gloomy sod myself, I rather enjoy it. Number 9 is Rosalie Cunningham and To Shoot Another Day. This album was described by Classic Rock as a beacon of eccentricity in a drab world. Yet this artist has kind of drifted well below my radar, I'm sorry to say, and this, her third album, I believe it's her third album, is a testimony to her kaleidoscopic musical brain and wardrobe to match. To Shoot Another Day is imbued with a breezy psychedelia melded with a metallic crunch of guitars, symptomatic of an artist that's very much enthralled to the 60s and 70s, and I like those. Interestingly, I read one review that said, "These tunes are intricately crafted together in a giant glitter puff of pure magic." And I'd have to concur. Songs like Timothy Martin's Conditioning School and Denim Eyes are just some of the very strange sonic twists and turns on this record, which in the words of Lauder twists nostalgia into revelation. This has a distinctly lysergic feel to it, which is probably why I enjoyed it so much. Number 8 is David Gilmour, Luck and Strange. Luck and Strange is exactly what we expect from a David Gilmour album. Lots of ethereal, spacey guitar noodling and a collection of meditations on the fragility of humankind and the individual spirit, I think. All delivered with a soupçon of optimism. In fact, Gilmour has proven rather sanguine about this album, saying that it's the best thing he's done since Dark Side of the Moon. Well, it certainly isn't that. But it's still a lovely, haunting album. The sound of an ageing man warbling about mortality and agey things. On Dark Side of the Moon, there's that line, "hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way." Oh, Gilmour is happier than that, I think. Especially with his wife writing the lyrics and his incredibly talented daughter contributing to this record. They're like a kind of a prog version of the Von Trapp family. Number 7 is Richard Thompson's Ship to Shore. Richard Thompson proffers 12 new songs that strain and snarl at the pith and peel of life, stuffed with weathered observations as they, according to The Guardian, gnash and churn through the human experience. We get songs like The Old Pack Mule, which is about the dismembering of an animal when the family falls on hard times. Tracks like you get the sultry swish of The Fear Never Leaves You, which is a meditation on PTSD, perhaps to demur, even implicitly, at the treatment of such souls. One critic suggested this song is slightly reminiscent of PJ Harvey's War Work. Life's a Bloody Show caricatures a jaded performer that opens with those tremulous guitar notes, slightly reminiscent of a Cole Porter number. I love the line in this, "Don't let on your soul has died and a hole has opened up inside." Interestingly, Leonard Cohen sings on his album Songs of Love and Hate that the rain falls down on last year's man, and that's certainly apparent here. Thompson has certainly become a deliverer of gloomy sketches, well, if not gloomy, at least unembellished critiques on the human condition. Number 6 is Big Big Train and the Likes of Us. This band have a mastery which is as apparent live as it is in the studio, as they continue to explore the more accessible corners of progressive rock by exploring the honeyed past of the British Isles, replete with that incessant chug of locomotives and factory whistles. It's hard to listen to without shedding a tear for Britain's oaken past, shall we say, or as Robert Smith might say, songs for a lost world. This album stands out as a magnificently melodic work, and like their previous albums is deliciously grandiose and deliciously prog, which oozes from every groove. This album is the sound of a band honouring its past, whilst at the same time, according to the Progressive Heart, revealing itself as an inviting boarding station for new admirers. Number 5 is Happiness Bastards by the Black Crowes. Happiness Bastard is the band's 10th studio album and their first album of original material in like 15 years. Very much putting them up there with Robert Smith's lot in terms of inaction, studio-wise that is. Chris Robinson has described this album as a love letter to rock and roll, and that's certainly apparent with the quality of the riffage on here and the sheer energy of this album as they pluck songs from their rock revivalist bag. Producer Jay Joyce has gone for specifically a natural live sound, which makes this album a joy to listen to. From the Led Zeppelin-esque Cross Your Fingers to the Deep Purple Stormbringer vibe of Dirty Cold Sun. And it's all brought to a head with a very wistful Kindred Friend. This album is absolutely fab. Number 4 is Deep Purple = 1. Their last album, that covers album, Turning to Crime, seems to suggest that this band were a spent force. Of course, Steve Morse left for personal reasons and they recruited Ulsterman Simon McBride. This is a real statement of intent, and sonically there's that continuity which is established by them retaining producer Bob Ezrin. And this, their 23rd album, they've kind of restated what made them great 50 years ago. And this album is much better than it should be. Simon McBride brings a youthful energy to this band as he's let loose on tracks like I'll Catch You and sizzles his way through a bit on the side. As classic rock states, it's clear he's his own man and the right man for Deep Purple. This album was a real surprise, I can assure you. Number 3 is True by Jon Anderson and the Band Geeks. This is a remarkable album that references that classic Yes sound, probably deliberately to have Steve Howe chewing his own beard off. It features all the twists and turns and sonic noodly stuff that we'd expect from a classic Yes album, yet adding a kind of modern cohesiveness to it. Guitarist Andy Graziano, I hope I've said his name correctly, is absolutely remarkable on this album. And according to Lauder, he moves effortlessly from Steve Howe-esque trills and frills to Trevor Rabin-like ornamentation and power, sometimes within just a few bars. And there's some wonderful Squire-esque bass lines on here as well. And some of the keyboards, of course, are absolutely excellent. I have done a full review of this album, so I don't want to labour this too much. Do check out the original review, I'll put a card up there. Number 2 is The Cure and Songs of a Lost World. This album brings together 8 songs of these potent tales of death and mortality. When I Have Fears That I Will Cease to Be, I think as the poem goes. And that's certainly explored here. I mean, stylistically, this album is very reminiscent of Disintegration and Blood Flowers, lacking the poppier tones that this band is also capable of in songs like Love Cats and Friday I'm in Love. There's none of that here. It's gloomy stuff, and God bless them for it. The band's sound are deliciously slow and elegantly weary on this. I think this is their 14th album. And I've already done an extensive review of this album. Do check that out, the card is up there. And number 1 is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Wild God. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds shone a spotlight on loss and spirituality on this album, Wild God. On a record that was originally conceived as Ode to Joy, nevertheless Nick Cave continues to grapple with the all-consuming nature of grief. Pushed to rapturous extremes on this album, especially the title track with its use of gospel voices. It adds a feeling of transcendence to this music. Yet this album still sounds as haunted as it does healing, especially on numbers like Frogs and Final Rescue Attempt. Pitchfork interestingly states that Wild God doesn't do much as capture Nick Cave fronting the Bad Seeds as losing himself within them. And there was a sense of someone emerging from something truly harrowing on this record. Seeing Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds live recently, Nick Cave seems to be in awe of all the sounds swirling around him. This is a fabulous, fabulous album. Anyway, there you have it. That's my 10 best albums of 2024. Which ones do you agree with? I'd love to know what your list is. Please leave your comments below. As I said at the beginning of this video, please do click like, subscribe and check that notification bell. Check some of the links below this video. Become a Patreon, why not? There's a fine body of work on my Patreon now. And it's a real classic rock community we're building there. Other than that, I'll leave you with my closing catchphrase, which is, as you know, hope you're well, staying safe, and of course that you keep listening.